All right, we are back with another roundtable. And today, what we're going to discuss is how to navigate awkward situations when your partner, your friends, your coworkers, your family are not on the same page with you when it comes to your health and fitness goals. This is something that everyone is going to encounter at some point in their journey. And what we want to do today is just give you guys some perspective and share our best strategies on how to deal with these social dynamics so that you guys can stay the course and reach your guys' goals. So I think maybe where we'll start the conversation today is just talking about what supportive versus unsupportive support looks like on a day-to-day basis when you're really locked in on your fitness goal.
I may start actually. So I grew up in an Italian family and I want to kind of unpack this history a little bit. So my dad was a bodybuilder and he and his family is straight from Italy. He actually moved out of living at his parents' home because it wasn't working for his bodybuilding prep. Like it didn't work. Not only was the food not always aligned, but he also had to eat a lot of food. So he really needed more control over his nutrition. And what's interesting is actually, I can see that in my own experience as well. I moved out maybe around 19, 20 years old. But before moving out, I actually was buying all of my own groceries. I was meal prepping myself. So really kind of getting independent and being in the driver's seat. So we have kind of a bit of contrast there of what things looked like in his family. And I even experienced that as well. Being from an Italian family, the focus was on food, eating a lot of food. And that's a really important experience because it's often something we need to unlearn, that a lot of people have these frameworks of going to social events and eating to the point of discomfort. And that becomes the norm. And then leaving those moments feeling physically and mentally uncomfortable, even having disruption to digestion. And then these become things that we kind of need to relearn as we start to build more health focused lifestyles. So within my family, I always had a lot of support because my dad was a bodybuilder prior to having us, but he at least had that own experience. So there was always a lot of respect there that I would just bring my own prepped meal when needed. And that was typically how I navigated those times while being in prep. And the times that were less supported, those can be challenging times. And I think the biggest struggle of navigating the times where we're maybe not met with support and feeling like we really need to explain ourselves, what we're really building in that moment is our ability to self-advocate. And this is something that ripples out beyond our nutrition. This is our practice of being able to set boundaries. And there are going to be times where people are meeting you with respect and compassion and curiosity to learn about what you're doing and respect your choice. But then there's also going to be times where you may not be met with support and respect. And those can be challenging times to navigate. So as a little bit of kind of a broad overview of how to navigate this, first, I would start with just meeting it with grace, that you're growing, you're changing, and everyone around you is meeting this new version of yourself. And then there's the practice of setting boundaries, being able to self-advocate, which it's something that's uncomfortable, but we want to be able to ask for what we need. And those that are really there for us and in our corner to want to support you on your goals and the things that you want for yourself and the things that are going to be supportive of your health. And then as we go through starting to grow and come into a new season of our life and become a different version of ourselves, part of that may also be expanding our circles as well. I know a big piece to my journey has been finding community that aligns with my values, that aligns with my interests. It doesn't mean I'm leaving old circles behind completely. Sometimes there's going to be relationships that we do outgrow. I know I have had relationships that I have outgrown. And then it's being able to find communities that feel like they reflect the version of ourselves that we want to be. I think DIY Body community is a really great example of that, of just sharing space with like-minded people.
Yeah, I love that. And I think to touch on like supportive versus unsupportive, like as you're watching this video, you can probably think of maybe it's an aunt or an uncle or a friend that's a little bit far away from you that as soon as you mention that maybe you're not drinking or not eating the snacks, there's that either backhanded compliment or a snide remark or a why can't you just have a little bite, right? Like we all have had an experience with unsupportive people. And I'm so happy, Emily, for you that you've always had that super supportive where your family is like asking you, how can I help you? What do you need? Or just getting curious and learning, which I think a big part of this talk today should be just like, how do we educate people and how do we not take someone else's uncomfortable projection and therefore completely veer off plan? Which I think, like, Carly, you've had a really good, like, kind of mantra for that unsupportive people for a while that I definitely share with my clients often.
Yeah, I always like to explain to my clients when, like Emily was saying, when you're going through what is essentially like an identity shift, especially if you are, not someone who has necessarily prioritized your nutrition, your training, and now you are in a program, you're weighing your food, you're tracking your food. This is new to you, so it's also new to the people around you. So you need to also have realistic expectations of how they are going to handle that. So, them asking questions, being curious, or maybe having the odd comment, if you're just mentally prepared for that, that's going to be a lot easier for you to handle. But one thing that's really important for you to remember is when you are in this program and when you are, at the beginning of a health and fitness journey that you're very, very focused on, you are the only person in that vehicle in this program. The people around you aren't necessarily part of it. So you can't expect them to audit their behavior and their decisions just because of what you're doing. And if it is a relationship that is close, like it's a close friend, it's a spouse, it's a family member, what I always say to people is you cannot expect them to understand what you're doing, but you can expect their respect. So just setting that boundary of like, you if they ask a question, explain it once, explain it twice. But if something kind of keeps coming up that they're making backhanded comments or like making fun of you for not indulging in alcohol, in food, whatever it is, that's where you need to set that boundary. It's like, hey, I get it that like this isn't for you. You don't understand it, but you need to respect that this is what I am doing. And if that is someone who respects you as a person, they will shut up about it, right? But it is really important to remember, like, you don't need to sit there and explain yourself every single time. They don't need to understand how many grams of protein that you're eating in a day unless they're genuinely asking out of curiosity. But getting to a place where you feel okay with, like, they might not be on the same page with you in what their goals are and their understanding of what you're doing, but they respect what you do. And I had both sides of that. Like Emily, I come from like very healthy, very active, very nutrition conscious parents. So they were really excited when I jumped into bodybuilding prep. They were really intrigued by it. I would bring like my meals to our family dinners, or like my mom would literally just like bake my sweet potato, do like, the chicken without oil. Like my mom was fully capable and they were really supportive and interested in it. And then my partner's family, it was like a completely new world for them. They had absolutely no idea that Carly's doing a fitness competition. Like, is she gonna? What is what is going on? They were all
Is she
confused by
okay?
it. However, they respected it. They asked me questions like when I would bring my food to, a family dinner or something like that. They would be like, "Oh, what are you eating? What's in this?" And I because I had that confidence level going into it, and I will say that, like, I do come by that naturally where I'm like, "No, this is what I'm doing." I've always been firm about that. So, I was fine with them asking questions about it, and I could tell that they were just genuinely curious, and they just didn't have much to say about other than that, other than them asking me what I was bringing, and they just respected it, and I was still able to go to, these family events and things like that. So, even though it was completely out of their like version of reality in terms of how they prioritize their health and fitness, they respected it. They didn't understand it, but they were like, cool, that's what Carly's doing, and that's fine. And those are the types of relationships you obviously want to have, because that's both sides. Like they're into it, they respect it, or if they're not into it, but they're okay with what you're doing, then unfortunately, in some capacity, we're all going to come across those relationships where there is friction, where they don't understand it and they also don't respect it. But when people don't respect what you're doing, like that comes from a much deeper layer. And then once you understand that, that's kind of where that confidence in that self advocacy, what Emily was talking about, can really come from, because you understand, like if they're making rude comments, they're like taunting you, like you're at a potluck and they're like, oh, I'm having a dessert and you can't have it, just like annoying things like that, you kind of start to understand that, like, okay, this has nothing to do with me and has everything to do with them. And I often find that people who have a hard time prioritizing their health and fitness, whether they've struggled with their weight, struggled with body dysmorphia, struggled with their relationship with food, they can find it very triggering when someone is doing it successfully, or when someone is doing it like confidently with boundaries, because all that does for those types of people is showcase in their face what they are not doing. And if you can, I think all of us have had those times in our lives where like you see someone doing well at something that you're struggling with, and like it creates a type of feeling. And understand, like that's part of the human experience, right? Like people in your life who are giving you friction about this, like they're not evil, they're not inherently bad, they're just going through something that they need to deal with, and let them do it on their own time. All that you can do is continue to just lead by example and they will follow suit. So I experienced things like that mostly at this time with coworkers who would make silly comments, in our work trips and working. It was a different work environment for me back then, but there would be times where we're in a closed space and people would be making fun of it, and sometimes I'd throw it back at them. That type of thing. But when you understand that it really has nothing to do with you, it's just them kind of seeing that, I think that just setting that firm boundary is the best thing that you can do for yourself. And I think too, understanding the relationships where setting that boundary is important, which is going to be your close friends, your family members. But like if you have coworkers and stuff who are being annoying about it, like are those people, like, do they matter? Does it matter? Like they're going to figure it out in their own time. That's not a relationship that you really need to be focusing on.
The
So.
thing that I said recently that I think landed for a lot of people is if you wouldn't go to them for advice, don't like worry about their judgment. So while it can feel very overwhelming to set a boundary, maybe it's at like a potluck or a family dinner that normally you would go all out at, and this time you're maybe using the hand method, or you did kind of estimate and track your macros and you're not going back for seconds. As much as we love our family, if you wouldn't go to them for health and fitness, specifically usually nutrition or alcohol consumption advice, then don't worry too much about their judgment. Like stay in your lane.
Yeah. And I think it's worth noting too, like when you are setting these boundaries, they're going to feel new and uncomfortable, but that's a part of the person that you are becoming. Because when you are on this health and fitness journey, it's not just about, changing your nutrition and your training and all of that, but it's truly changing the person that you're becoming. And it's going to come down to sometimes setting those uncomfortable boundaries. And coming from a recovering people pleaser herself, who's been really working at setting boundaries in all areas of my life more this past year, like it feels so good when you don't betray yourself. And so that's something that I always tell my clients, like when you're in those experiences, like you don't want to betray yourself just for the sake of pleasing somebody else. So it might feel uncomfortable setting those things, but don't be afraid to do that, because you're going to feel so much better about it at the end. Because oftentimes when clients come to me and they're like, oh, I ended up having, some drinks or some food that I didn't even want to have, it's not even about the drinks or the food, but it's about them betraying themselves. And so we kind of unpack that. So I
Well, I
think
have a
when you are
question
setting
for you,
those,
Noli. Like, do you think that
yeah.
like your friend group matters, and like that if you're actually hanging out with those people and you don't even want to eat the food, but you're like, can you kind of like touch on that thought?
Yeah, like I know that for myself personally, like over the last couple of years since I've really embarked on like my health and fitness journey and like went hard with competing, it has helped me weed out the people that don't really matter in my life. And like I can confidently say now that like this entire group, my friends outside of DIY Body, like everybody supports my health and fitness goals, and the people that didn't end up supporting it, like I haven't really lost out on anything because they're not supporting the person that I am becoming. And I'm sure we can all speak to us becoming different people throughout our life, and you don't want to have those people that are bringing you down just because of kind of the topics that Carly talked about, like either like insecurity or like they're projecting on you. Sometimes you just can't change those things about other people, and they're on their own journey, and they're having to figure those things out on their own, and that has nothing to do with you. So yeah, I would say like as you're leveling up, you're going to start shedding out those other people and those other maybe just activities or jobs or things that you do that no longer serve you. And I don't think people talk about that enough, how uncomfortable that can feel sometimes. And sometimes it can feel really lonely and isolating. And I've gone through that when I moved to Vancouver and I fully embarked on my bodybuilding prep. Like I had to create like a whole new community for myself. And there was definitely times where I felt lonely and isolated, getting up at 5 to go to the gym by myself in a new city. I didn't know anybody, but then I slowly started meeting people that had like-minded interests, and now like I couldn't be more happy. So I think that just goes to show that like through all of the different things that you go through in your health and fitness journey and with this program, there's going to be lots of times where you are feeling uncomfortable, but there is so much growth on the other side, and it's going to be so worth it for the person that you become afterwards.
How do you guys know when you're starting to outgrow your friend circle? If there's like any points in your guys' experience when that's happened, what
Mm.
was that point for you?
I can touch on this a little bit. So, when I first got into health and fitness more and I started taking it more seriously, I was coming from a place of I was in my early 20s. I was going out on the weekends and drinking, typically like 2 to 3 nights a week, staying out late, eating fast food, and things like that. So it was a pretty big transition for me and also for my friend group for me to go from that to not going out, going to the gym on the weekends. That was like a big thing for me because I would always train from Monday to Thursday and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday was just a complete write off. So I definitely got a lot of honestly judgment from friends. And one of the biggest things that I actually experienced with some of my friends, former friends, is them almost making it seem like I was acting better than them or like I was too good to have a couple of drinks on the weekend or too good to say no to going out for like a greasy breakfast the next morning or whatever it may be, because I actually would still try to go out and just not drink and things like that, right? Because I'm like, these are my friends. I still want to hang out with them. And that actually caused me to go out less and almost like isolate myself just a little bit more. But again, like just like Carly said, a lot of people, it's a projection from their own insecurities and what they feel they could actually not ever do. So it's like, oh, you're better than me because you're not drinking. And I know deep down that I probably shouldn't be drinking as much as I am right now. Right. Whereas there's also other people I have found who are confident in the choices that they're making if they want to have a couple of drinks and that doesn't impact what I choose to do doesn't impact them. So I think that that's just really important that you choose to surround yourself with people who are respectful and who also don't let whatever you're doing impact like their mood, right? Like people can't make it seem like you deciding not to drink has ruined the whole evening for everybody because ultimately that has nothing to do with it and your choices has nothing to do with how much fun everybody else has. And one thing that you really will have to do is set boundaries and be firm and be confident in what you are doing, right? And so for some people, like Coach Noli said, former people pleasers or people who maybe have struggled with peer pressure and being able to say no in those situations in the past, like it can be hard to practice standing your ground and to practice saying no. And you're probably going to have to say it a lot too. Like there are sometimes still certain events with people that just don't understand when I don't want to have a drink. And like throughout the night, they'll continue to ask me, continue to ask me, continue to ask me. And I'm not completely sober. Like I do have a drink every now and then, which can also be confusing to people if you choose to sometimes and you don't other times. But again, just being able to repeatedly practice expressing what it is that your goals are, or honestly, even just saying like, hey guys, like, would you rather that I not come because me drinking is clearly such an issue for you, whereas I'm here to actually spend time with you guys because I genuinely enjoy your company. So sometimes just like giving them a little bit of attitude back, or like, let's not make this about the food. Let's make this about the fact that we're all here celebrating Easter or celebrating so and so's birthday or whatever, right? Like just reframing it, I think can honestly be so valuable. And then another thing I wanted to quickly touch on is also people will only ever understand things from their own perspective and their own level of understanding. And so for a lot of people, health and fitness is equated to dieting. So they automatically assume that maybe you are doing the exact same diet that they once did that they failed, whether it was like a crazy restrictive diet or eliminating carbs or cutting out X, Y, and Z. And they don't actually understand that you can make healthy lifestyle changes. And that does require some sacrifice, but it also doesn't mean that you're starving yourself or that you can never have birthday cake or things like that. And so that's really where you have to decide if the person is genuinely interested in like knowing what it is that you're doing, because you could very well inspire them in their health and fitness journey, or if it's really just not going to land with them and you know that, and so you just choose to say like, no thank you, I'm good. But I've also gotten that a lot from people as well, where, you know, if I say no to dessert, they're like, are you just never going to eat dessert again? And it's kind of hard, honestly, to explain. Like, have you ever tried to explain macros, tracking macros to somebody who doesn't understand nutrition at all? It can be challenging and it can definitely not land with them. So it is just worth deciding if that's really worth like having that conversation, or if you just kind of want to cut it short, but also just having honestly some respect for people, and some people too, because they may have had a lot of negative experiences in their health and fitness journey that has shaped their view on what it looks like for someone to look after themselves eventually.
I'm going to touch
Honestly,
on something that we haven't touched on yet, and that is that this also applies to your spouse. And I think that is one of the dynamics that can be the most challenging, where you're growing, you're making changes. We have a lot of females in the program, so they're starting to really focus on their fitness, etc. And then maybe their spouse just doesn't get it. And it may take them a little bit of time to get it, but I think one of the roots of what we have said in this conversation is that they don't need to understand. They don't need to be doing exactly what you're doing. But I think that you can expect their support and their respect, even if their choices are looking different. I am coming up on being married 12 years with my husband for 15, and we've gone through so many different seasons and so many different seasons of our growth as well. And one of my values within marriage is that we either grow together or we grow apart. However, that doesn't mean that we're going to grow at the same rate. I can be someone that really is invested in personal development. And what I see about the way things trend for me is that suddenly I will go through this growth phase and like, boom, I kind of get to this next level of the things that I'm focusing on. And my husband may not be there yet. Like he's a little bit of a slower processor, where it does take him time to kind of, marinate and take things at his own pace. So I think it goes on both sides, that I think that we can expect to have respect and support, but I think we can also have that expectation of ourselves to give it, that it may take them some time to get where we are getting to. Some of the things that I've really advocated for within my household is that we're all caring for our health, just because it's part of our values, and that's not something I'm willing to compromise. So I also do have my hard lines of, these are my values, these are the things I'm not willing to compromise. I don't expect my husband to be a bodybuilder or to run a marathon. I'm really trying to get that doubles high rocks, really trying. And if it never happens, it never happens. What I do want for him is for him to feel as good as he can, for him to be caring for his health so that he can be there for me as a partner and there for our children as well. So there is kind of a standard, a bar there. and it has to do with my core values. But again, it's not that I expect him to be a marathon runner or a bodybuilder. I just want him to care for himself. And then I also meet him with support with that, guiding him to have balanced nutrition, holding space for him to be able to go and get his movement in. And also, I do appreciate that we have just different structures, that I have a little bit more flexibility for fitting things in, like training sessions. And then he has a job that's really demanding right now. And that's a season of his life that he's in. So, something that we also talk about as well is that what my health and fitness looks like right now is not the standard, and it's not a realistic expectation for what his health and fitness is going to look like right now. We're even coming into like a bunch of outdoor projects. So even having him step back and see the big picture of like him doing manual labor outside is still part of his fitness. So for him to be able to have that time and capacity to do that, he may actually need to pull back at the gym. So, continuing to support him being balanced and, again, just being that best version of himself.
I want to add something in, and I think that this could be an opportunity for us to kind of like share examples of this. Talking about your spouse, because this is an important one, and this one comes up a lot for our clients. I think it's also important to recognize not being like a victim within your relationship and being able to understand like what is supportive behavior and what is unsupportive behavior. So as an example, because like similar experience to Emily, like especially when I started bodybuilding, that was like early on in my fitness journey. So that was a big transition for Jeff. And he was like, what is going on? Because Jeff also came from like an Italian family. And he came from like a farming family. So that was their version of like physical activity. It was like haying and taking care of the property and things like that. And then just like eating home cooked meals. There really wasn't a form of like training or tracked nutrition in his like family history. So for me to start bodybuilding was a lot for him. For me to be on a program was very different from him because he came from a snack household where he would be sitting on the couch in the evening eating a bag of chips, right? So recognizing that as an example, if you are in a fitness journey and your partner wants to eat a bag of chips on the couch beside you in the evening, that's not unsupportive. Like you need to be okay with allowing them to do that. Like you don't need to come to your coach and be like, it's just really hard for me because my partner just like snacks at night. And it's like, if they're just sitting beside you eating a bag of chips, like that's not them being rude. That's not them being unsupportive. If they're sitting beside you and they're like, come on, babe, like, let's just, order a pizza. Let's have some chips. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Okay. When you've set that boundary and they're still pushing past it, then we're coming into that territory of, okay, my partner's not being supportive of my goals right now. But those are two very different things, right? So allowing your partner to still live their own life, that needs to be important too. But then being able to recognize kind of where it's crossing over, that's one distinction that I often have to make with my clients. Like what, are they really being unsupportive, or are you just like struggling with allowing them to live their own life beside you? Can you guys think of other examples that your clients have struggled with in the past that are similar?
I think that's a really good differentiation though.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had a client conversation recently about just her partner wanting or not going out to support her with her walks to hit her step goals. So we've been working on like getting more consistent with her steps. And she kind of just asked for advice with that. And I said, basically, I was like, one approach is communicating as best as you can and just being like, hey, I'd really appreciate if you could come and support me on some of these walks throughout the week. I was like, maybe you could even like entice him with going to get a coffee. I know that's something that I did with my ex on my bodybuilding preps. Is I'd be like, okay, we can get you a pastry. I'll go get like a sugar-free coffee and we'll go for a walk. But then I was also like on the other end, like Emily said, if it takes him some time to like warm up to these lifestyle changes, or maybe if he's just not ready for that yet, like you kind of just have to take that accountability and go out there and get those steps, because at the end of the day, it's your choice. No one is forcing you to be on this health and fitness journey. No one is forcing you to work towards these goals. For a lot of people too, like these goals are aesthetic driven, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is a whole part of my bodybuilding journey, but it's going to come down to you taking that accountability and going and getting it done, regardless if someone is there to support you or not.
Before I head out, I think a big one, especially with summer coming up, is maybe like a weekend trip with like friends or family, where the unsupportive behavior can really come out, especially if you're spending multiple days with these people where they feel like they're getting annoyed. And I think like just having a really clear plan of your success before you go on this trip can be really helpful. And if you're going with friends, having that one friend that will support you and back you up and be like, hey, like, let's go for that coffee walk. Let's eat that protein bar. Let's barbecue that chicken. So, really trying to like hone in on those people that are supportive and lean on them and stick to them and ask them for help if you need it. I think that's a really good way to like encourage yourself for what you're doing, because all those unsupportive behaviors, backhanded comments, aren't you going to eat this, whatever it might be, like that stuff is really never going to stop. It's only going to stop if you don't let it like absorb all of it. Where was I going with this? On like that weekend trip and stuff, like having maybe like a friend that's going to go to the grocery store with you, or that's not going to eat out every single meal with you. Maybe they want to do some meal prep or go on walks or go to the gym. Just really sticking in and visualizing that weekend trip or vacation that it is. What's that going to be like to be successful, and where can you ask for help? Asking for help is a support mechanism.
Maybe we want to talk about some strategies that you guys have given your clients, or even what you guys do for your own self when you are really focused on a specific fitness goal.
I would say just being verbal about your goals and your agenda. I'm just thinking back to I prepped this past summer. I went on a road trip with my besties to Utah, and I had to research gyms in the area to get my cardio sessions in, to get my gym sessions in. We stopped in like Montana, like multiple places throughout this road trip. So I basically just like verbalized to them. I was like, this is my game plan. I'm getting up in the morning. I need to go do my cardio, my gym session. You guys are welcome to do whatever you want to do. And then I will meet up with you later in the day. And all of my friends at this point in my journey are supportive of that. But I think that just like communicating will be helpful for not only your friends that you're with on a trip or your family, but also for yourself, because then you get the chance to like set those intentions and get organized. And it doesn't feel as stressful when you create that game plan for yourself. So that's what I did. Same with my nutrition. I like had my meal prep. I knew that sometimes I would have to like veer away, go get my groceries or use Instacart, do my meal prep, and then they were welcome to go and enjoy whatever food they wanted to. Or even just when I'm at restaurants, like being okay myself with like sitting there and not participating in the food aspect. And that's also going to depend on your goals. Obviously, with me being on a bodybuilding prep, that was more rigid and strict. There's no room for straying. So it doesn't have to be like that depending on where you're at in your health and fitness journey. But I do still think that just communicating is really important, and it just helps you set those intentions and those boundaries ahead of time as well.
I really think that like the let them theory comes into play with this for people. Honestly, I think like you said, talking about it, setting boundaries, but like literally be insufferable. Like be that person who's talking about their health and fitness, because it's going to inspire the people that it needs to. And then people who are going to be annoyed about it, again, like that's on them. But if you're okay with like shouting from the rooftops that you're excited about this, like let yourself be the joke, because pretty soon either you're going to be laughing because you will be so far ahead of these people that just never actually understood the joke, or they're going to level up and grow with you. I think that this can also come into play with like transitional periods in your life when maybe these are friendships you're going to outgrow, and that can happen naturally. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It'll just be like a lack of alignment for you with these people. But if you're loud about it, if you're excited about it, if you are happy and positive and optimistic, that's going to rub off in the right way on the right people. And then the wrong people just won't continue forward with you. And Emily was talking about community here earlier on in the program too. And I think that like by being loud about it, you're going to be able to see the people in your life who kind of like pop up in a good way and align with them. Because one thing that you will notice, and this almost speaks to like the opposite of what Clara was talking about, where like you will start to see people in your life that like you will start to notice the ones that are causing friction and that are having a hard time with you prioritizing your fitness. You will also start to see people pop up in your life, and you will know that because suddenly, you know, when you go for coffee with them, when you have a group hangout and you have a conversation with them, like you feel better afterwards. When you ask that person for advice, it's genuinely good advice that you would take. And the more time you spend with them, more positive things happen in your life when it comes to your health and fitness, right? Like there's friendships that I phased myself out of through my bodybuilding and through me prioritizing my fitness. And there's friendships like this group here that grew because of that. And prioritizing your health and fitness and aligning yourself with people who go after personal growth, like that will trickle into other areas of your life and everything will start to happen for you, which I think can be really cool. So also being able to see how those you may lose friendships, but you're also going to gain so much from going through that transition. So again, like be loud, let new people come into your life and let old friendships kind of phase out because the progression of what that can look like can be really cool and it can be really exciting, but there is just that transitional period that can definitely happen for people.
I
Yeah,
have Oh, go
sorry.
ahead, Zach.
Go ahead,
I
Zach.
feel like people will naturally phase themselves out of your life when you start sticking to your goals and you start just like sticking to your guns. Like I know I've lost, I guess not necessarily lost, but distanced myself from a lot of friends just naturally just by doing what I do. I was never super vocal about it, but I just stuck to my guns in all the situations. And like the friends who like to drink, the friends who like to party, they just won't hang out with you unless you're doing those things. And I think that's just a clear indication of like, hey, these aren't my people. I've had a lot of instances where that's happened, but I think at the end of the day, when it comes to your own personal fitness, you really can't concern yourself with what other people think, what other people say, and what other people do in response to what you're doing. It just doesn't freaking matter because at the end of the day, a lot of these people don't really care about your health and your fitness. They will separate from you and they will go about their day. They're thinking about themselves. Almost everybody's thinking about themselves until you're in front of them and then you make them uncomfortable. So I think, you can't concern yourself with that because I think it's only going to cause you more stress. It's going to cause you more angst. And you're focusing on the wrong things. So I think if you just stick to your guns, focus on yourself, and you will attract the right people naturally. And the other people will naturally phase themselves out, and that's okay. And honestly, it's going to be for the better because those people who naturally phase themselves out were just holding you back to begin with. And maybe they were good friends, but maybe they're just not meant to be in your life for these reasons. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's like you're just doing what's right for you. And so you can't feel bad about any sort of outcome that comes from that because from you, it's coming from a positive place where you just want to improve. So if people leave, they leave. If people aren't happy about it, then let them. At the end of the day, it's not your concern. At least that's the way I feel about it. And I'm pretty black and white with this kind of thing. But yeah, I just generally don't concern myself with anyone else's thoughts about my personal health and fitness.
Even if I feel lucky that this isn't something that I really have to deal with in this day and age. That's something that I had to learn to navigate in my early 20s when I was getting serious about bodybuilding and competing. But this day and age, everybody knows what I'm about. As long as you can just hold your ground, people will start to learn to respect your decisions. If this resonated with you, just leave your thoughts in the comments. And if there's anybody else out there that you think would benefit from listening to this episode, make sure you guys share this with them. Other than that, we appreciate you guys listening and we will see you guys on the next episode.